marriage and a whole episode on the divorce. And it kind of brings it home to you when you think about Tolkien was writing for pretty much like 50 years, like his whole career, like 1916, 1917 up to like 1977. That's like 60 years, 50, 60 years, whatever. And you think like, oh shit, yeah, he was writing his whole life. And it's then when I'm doing some quick reading and I find an entire essay called The Statute of Finwë Miriel, which I've been referring back to time and time again. But then just before we started reading this episode, just before we sat down to start recording this episode, I went back through and I read the whole essay, like start to finish, and I was like, there's dozens like this. And then there's all the books he wrote and blah, blah, blah. Fucking hell, there is so much material out there. Jesus, which is
he was the original Jeremy Kyle, dealing with relationship problems within his writing.
I think it's more along the lines of
humans
presenting his views on relationships through the lens of an elf, or through his story, which is fine. You'd expect that. What I've been working on today, like actually today, is obviously, you know, I'm quite a fan of AI and the things it can do for us as a species. And I've been training my own Tolkien ChatGPT. So I've got a private ChatGPT that I'm making. I'm training it on Tolkien materials. It's strictly for educational purposes to refer back to. Like, the thing is, right, we use the term AI. It's not strictly that. It's more of a marketing term at this point. It doesn't think for itself. It's not an artificial intelligence. It doesn't think for itself.
So it doesn't do a lot of sexy talk.
No, not really. It's just more
pulls information.
Exactly. It's just a very smart search engine.
Yeah.
It's not coming up with anything new. It's just searching the internet or searching what you've fed it and giving you some answers. So when, you know, like, people have very strong opinions on AI, and I think AI generated art is a little bit of a different argument, but at the moment it's not doing anything new. So when I'm training it on all of the Tolkien documents that I can get my hands on as my own personal reference guide, because part of the thing I train it on is I make it give references whenever it gives you an answer, and it'll say, oh, I found this here and here.
Yeah.
So I can go back and search it myself. And all it's doing is it's just cutting down the amount of time that it takes me to do my research. And for that, it's absolutely perfect. And I want to tweak it a little bit, and hopefully I can get it made, like I can make it public. And I'm not sure about the copyright and what have you, but I own all of the books I've been using.
You don't mean, though, that you're cutting down on the research. You're meaning that you get more efficient so that you research more. Well, you're making it sound like, oh, I've got all this free time because I'm going to have this AI. And it's actually, no, I'm creating time to fill it with more Tolkien things.
All we can do is decide what to do with the time given to us. And I've made my choice. Right, let's get into the episode today, because we've got a fair bit to cover on. So a quick little update on the show. The way it's going to work this episode, we're going to bring the Noldor series to a close today, with a little asterisk next to it. Noldor, at the end of this episode, we will get the Noldor to where they are entwined in everything else that's going on in Middle-earth, in which case it then becomes more about the events and the places within Beleriand and Middle-earth and etc, etc. So in my mind, that will bring us to the end of an overview for the Noldor as like the prologue. So we're at the end of the beginning today.
Yeah.
Because there is still a fuck ton. There's thousands more years of Noldor history after this. But we will have reached an introduction as to who they are and what they were doing and how they got to Middle-earth. Like, they were in Middle-earth, they were left Middle-earth, and then they're back. And then I will follow it up with a bonus a smaller episode where it'll just be me recording it. Just me, Chris, flying solo, where I'll go over the language and the etymologies and some of the things I found interesting around the Noldor and the language. Because Becca's just ready to commit whenever we talk about language, so I'm not going to put that on her anymore, but I enjoy recording it and I enjoy researching it, so I might as well get something useful out of it, which would be a podcast episode. And that's where we're at. And then after that, we're going to do a couple of fun episodes, take us over Christmas. We'll be back in the new year where we'll put Feanor on trial, for lack of a better word. So this is the history. Feanor's in this a lot, which you've understood. Feanor's in this a lot, but we're going to go into the analysis, and I'm just trying to give the facts, and obviously my opinion colours what I think of him. So we'll hear from someone who is perhaps a little bit more positive towards Feanor. That's not to say that this person would fully defend him in all aspects, but again, just kind of watch this space, because we're hoping to get a guest on for that one. And then after that, we're going to move into year 2 of the podcast.
Phew.
That will bring us into year 2 of the podcast, a drunk history of Middle-earth. It
started that night.
That's crazy. It started in
when we drank all that. Well, I drank all that wine. You drank all that whiskey.
Yeah.
We talked absolute bollocks.
Yeah, and that's yeah. And then fucking year 2 will be coming into. Yeah. The show's evolved a lot. The listenership's a lot more than I expected.
But like we said then, we do this for fun, and that's still the case.
Yeah.
So I think that's what keeps it nice, is that we're not these crazy people nowadays that think, I want to start a podcast to be successful. We're just doing it for fun. You're a big nerd, and I am entertaining your nerdiness.
Yeah, exactly. I'm already successful in my day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Don't need a podcast to make that better for me. Right.
Whatever.
Should we crack on with Noldor Part 3? Do you remember where we left off at the end of the last one?
Was I drinking?
No, you weren't. No.
Let me think hard.
Yeah.
It's going to be really hard. Okay, give me a clue.
There was a certain speech made. Certain couple of speeches made by us.
Right, okay. So they ended up in... was it Fingolfin?
The other one, Feanor.
Feanor was in the middle of like this city, and all of the elves surrounded him with torches and lit up the city. Everyone wanted to hear his message, and he was a he's a wordsmith. So people listened to him and his message, and he pretty much said, follow me, let's get shit sorted. We're going to be taken for fools if you don't follow me now.
Absolutely, and that is a nice little segue. So that was when Feanor made his speech to the Noldor, and then him and his sons proclaimed their oath. Now, a friend of the show, a very talented composer, musician, Alex, who you might know as Alex, and he's on Instagram as Silmarillion Soundtrack. He has very kindly let me include his rendition of Feanor's oath in Quenya in the episode.
That's really kind, because it's amazing.
So for the next 2 minutes, I'm just going to play this clip for you, and you can all listen to what Feanor's oath sounded like in Quenya.
Nae kotumo ar nilmo, kalima vala, thausa ar boika, moringo thonna, elda ar maya ar apanona, endoresse atansin unona, ilar thanye, ilar melme, ilar malkason samme, Osta ilar harwe, lau ambartana. So thauruva, feanarollo, ar feanaro nocello. Iman ascalia, ar haria, ar mikamme mappa. Era hirara, ar haya hata.
That gives me fucking chills. Like, every time I hear it, it's insane. The bit where he's Varda Manwe. You know he's swearing the oath with them as witnesses, but it also sounds very intimidating.
Well, it screams to me as like the passion that hackers have.
All right.
That sort of power and passion. You know,
he's very, very, very passionate.
Obviously, it's going to be amplified because it's actually, in terms of fictional, it is a very powerful and emotive area.
Hell fucking yes, it is. Yeah, absolutely.
But if that was translated into real life, it would be almost like the hackers that New Zealanders do for like...
Sorry, haka.
Yeah,
Haka.
Yeah, for like funerals and stuff.
Right, I was thinking nerds with a computer.
No.
Come on, you can understand why I'd think hacker. Yeah, but you can understand why when I hear the word hacker, I don't think of what you said straight away.
Well, I think there'll be a lot of people that
No.
back me up here.
Why are you making
We're both from the northeast.
You're making a fucking argument where there is no argument. Hacker and hacker sound very similar, but they are spelt two different ways.
Okay.
I apologise that I'm not a fucking mind reader, but yes, I do agree with your point. If you look at it as a hacker, Haka, like a hacker dance and like the war chants, 100%, yeah, that's fucking spot on. Absolutely. Like, and it's like, in its intended format as well, do you know, like, so when you see it at rugby matches, you know it's like a bit of like performance art and stuff like that. But imagine seeing that like on a proper battlefield.
Yeah. That was what I was meaning.
Yeah, that's fucking mint. Yeah, 100%. Straight up.
Before you got cross.
Yeah, because you got angry at me for not knowing the
anger.
difference between two sounds.
It was not anger. So everyone,
is this about the nachos?
This is
about tea, isn't it?
This is Christopher being unreasonable again. You turn your back and he steals all the nachos. Okay.
I told you we are sharing from one plate.
Yes.
Do not leave the room until we finish the food.
And our
because
dog.
because I knew exactly what would happen. Is that if you left the room, you would come back, and no matter what had happened, you'd be like this dying swan. You'd be draping yourself over the sofa arm.
No.
Like, oh, I'm dying of starvation. You've eaten all my food.
No.
And
our poor dog.
Lo and behold,
our poorly dog.
Lo and behold, right? Fuck you. Lo and behold, you left the room for 2 minutes. I ate
even 2 minutes.
I ate one fucking nacho, and you came back, and you think I was Pol Pot.
Right. If you ever meet Christopher, you'll know that he's got a big mouth. One, you don't even need to meet him to know that. You're listening to the podcast.
I've got a pert little prison mouth.
He's got a big mouth, so he takes in a lot of food when he bites. So he's saying one bite, it's like Shrek bite.
I've got small mouth.
So when I came back after, like, it didn't even feel like 2 minutes, probably wasn't, to feed our poorly dog, because he was very hungry, I came back and there was barely anything left. Crumbs.
Full of
And then
shit.
he went on the proper defence, which just screams to me guilt.
I will not stand for this slander.
And then he's doing it again with the hacker, because in the context of this recording, hacker and hacker, you would kind of think that you would know what I was referring to in the context.
Right, let's just agree that you're wrong and move on.
What are they? Feanor, you angry bastard.
Feanor caused arguments amongst the Noldor.
Yeah.
After he and his sons had sworn their oaths, the Noldor agreed that they would leave Valinor. However, they did not agree that Feanor would be their leader, because even though he was the oldest son of Finwë, a lot of them loved Fingolfin, who'd been ruling them in Feanor's absence. And it was this loyalty that caused a rift. And eventually, the other brother, Finarfin, which I just want to point out here.
I'm getting confused again with the names.
Right, I just want to point this out here. It's been torturing me for the last 2 days, and I can't think of where I've done it. I think at one point you'd said Fingon as one of the brothers, and I'd said, yeah, that's fine, and agreed. It's not. The brothers are Feanor, Fingolfin, and
Findus.
Finarfin. Shut the fuck up.
I thought Findus was one.
Findus is the sister, right? But please do not derail me, because this is I need to get this right. Feanor, Fingolfin, Finarfin are the brothers.
Yeah.
Fingon is Fingolfin's son. Okay?
Okay.
And if you're binging this episode, I know a lot of people binge this podcast. Like, I get people messaging me and say, like, oh, I'm listening to all the episodes from front to back. I'm like, you're fucking brave, you sad bastard. Find something else to do with your life. But if you're binging this and you heard me say that Fingon was one of Finwë's sons, it's not. He's one of Finwë's grandsons. Anyway, I'm sorry I got so aggressive there, Rebecca, but I really needed to make that right because it's been fucking torturing me, and I can't find the episode. I can't find the bit of the episode.
You can sleep well tonight.
Yeah, I just needed to get it off my chest. So, they argued amongst themselves, much like me and you were doing, and eventually Finarfin, the third brother, the calmest brother, brother, urged everyone to stop and pause before they did something that couldn't be undone. It's like, guys, chill out. We don't want to, we don't want to be a shit about this. And then, oh god, I undone all my hard work in this next paragraph. Orodreth, who is either, depending on your source, because Tolkien, it was a bit of a weird one, Orodreth is either Finarfin's son or Finarfin's grandson, depending on the source, is the only one of Finarfin's kids who, like, supports everyone just chilling out. And, because Finarfin was saying, like, do we even have to leave Valinor? Like, Feanor's got everyone whipped up into a frenzy. Like, would it not be better for us to just not go? And Orodreth is the only one who says, I think you're right, either dad or granddad. But the others, including Finarfin's daughter, Galadriel, wants to go. Now, you'll recognise Galadriel's name, obviously. Kate Blanchett, Morphy Clark, So Galadriel didn't swear an oath. That's important to remember. She didn't swear the Oath of Feanor, but her words did stir her. His words stirred her, and she wanted to go to Middle-earth. She wanted to see the wide, unguarded lands, and she wanted to rule a kingdom of her own, or she wanted to rule her own lands. And it said that day, Galadriel was the only woman to stand tall and valiant amongst the princes, which gives you a clue of just how important Galadriel will prove to be in the end. And so, there was a great debate where others, like Fingolfin, again, the king, de facto king at this point, and Turgon, who later becomes very important, they spoke out against Feanor, but the end result of it was this. Most of the Noldor assembled wanted to go out and explore the world. Some wanted to stay, but most wanted to go. So, Feanor organised his lot, and Fingolfin said, well, if my people want to go, I won't leave them to Feanor. So even though Fingolfin didn't want to go to Middle-earth, he still did because he didn't want to leave his people to Feanor. And while this was going on, the Valar were watching and waiting, and they didn't believe that Feanor could hold all of the elves together. And they were right, because straight away, like I mentioned, a lot of them, he was like, great, you want to go, everyone follow me. And they were like,
have you thought of the logistics?
Well, it was more like,
do you have a plan?
Feanor, you might have convinced us, but you're still a bit of a twat, so we still want to follow Fingolfin. And so they set out in two big hosts. The host of Feanor and the host of Fingolfin. And just as they were setting out, a messenger from Manwë arrived, and he said, against the folly of Feanor shall be set my counsel only. Go not forth, for the hour is evil, and your road leads to sorrow that ye do not foresee. No aid will the Valar lend you in this quest, but neither will they hinder you. For this ye shall know, as ye came hither freely, freely shall ye depart. But thou, Feanor Finwë's son, by thine oath art exiled. The lies of Melkor thou shalt unlearn in bitterness. Valar he is, thou sayest. Then thou hast sworn in vain, for none of the Valar can overcome now or ever within the halls of Ea, not though through Eru, whom thou namest, had made thee thrice greater than thou art. So what they're saying, with my tongue doing fucking dances.
You're not from a medieval realm.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Why.
They're saying, we're not going to stop you. We're not going to help you, though. You do what you want, but Feanor, everything you are doing is because of you. It's your own oath that is now compelling you, and you swore on Eru, but know this, you will not be able to overcome Morgoth, even if you, and it says thrice greater, if Eru had made you 3 times as strong as you are now, you would still not be able to overcome Morgoth. And that's the crux of what this messenger from Manwë is saying. It's a warning.
So did that motivate him? So he believes that they're kind of misleading him, they're trying to trip him up. So did it motivate him, or did it make him fearful?
What do you think?
Well, I would say it would. Well, if someone said that to me, it would motivate me more in what I believed in.
Well, Feanor.
It's like telling someone,
yeah.
Don't press that big red button.
I'm starting to regret some of my words against Feanor because it turns out I'm fucking married to him. Because Feanor laughed and spoke not to the herald, but to the Noldor, saying, So, then will this valiant people send forth the heir of their king alone into banishment with his sons only, and return to their bondage? But if any will come with me, I say to them, Is sorrow foreboded to you? But in Aman we have seen it. In Aman we have come through bliss to war. The other now we will try, through sorrow to find joy, or freedom at the least. Then turning to the herald, he said, Say this to Manwë Sulimo, High King of Arda. If Feanor cannot overthrow Morgoth, at least he delays not to assail him, and sits not idle in grief. And it may be that Eru has set me in fire greater than thou knowest. Such hurt at the least will I do to the foe of the Valar, that even in the mighty ring of doom shall wonder to hear it. Yea, in the end they shall follow me. Farewell. And so, with Captain Dumbfuck at the helm, the Noldor now set out for Middle-earth.
I feel personally attacked.
Yeah, I'm starting to have a realisation I've actually married Feanor. Fucking hell. But first they had to leave Aman, right? And that would prove trickier than anyone could have foreseen, because the two groups do set out, but Taniquetil is kind of on the equator. So the Taniquetil, the tallest mountain in the world, and pretty much where Valinor is, it's on the equator. And that means that the sea is at its widest point here between the two continents, and so Feanor sets out north, where the land will become much, 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 much narrower. And back in Valinor, so the Noldor have left, but back in Valinor, the Valar are wondering what to do. And this bit blew my mind when I learned this, and I was researching this. It said that the Valar wept, and they wept equally for the marring of Feanor as for the darkening of Valinor. So they were just as sad about the things Feanor had done as they were for Morgoth killing the trees. And the reason for this is that it was all of his lost potential, and only Manwë had an inkling, amongst even the Valar, of all of the things that Feanor could really be capable of if he'd been just a little bit different. If he'd have stayed in Valinor and hadn't been poisoned by the lies of Morgoth, then the things he would be capable of would have been unknowable. And so Manwë weeps for that, and he hears what the herald comes back to him and tells him, this is what Feanor said, and he's proper sorrowful. And all of the Valar are, and it just blew my mind. Like, I thought they all thought he was a bit of a prick, and it turns out, no, like...
They're a parent.
Yeah, well, it seems like an older sibling type parent type relationship, where they are like, they hold it equally important that the trees are dead and Feanor has ran off. They hold that in equal importance, and I think that's a key thing for people to understand, because I don't even think people who read the Silmarillion and understand it would realise just how important that bit is. So that's something that I really do want to stress. But
I can feel what's coming here.
Manwë put his head down and he wasn't sure of kind of like what to do. But it seems like in that moment that Eru spoke to him, because the herald came back to him and said, like, you know, Feanor has said that the deeds of the Noldor will live forever in song. And it's at that point that Manwë puts his head up, and I think it was Eru talking to him again, and he said, "Then let it be, but these songs shall be dearly bought, and it could be no other way. And from all of the evil that will happen with Feanor, then good will come from it." And that goes right back to the beginning of creation. Do you remember when Melkor tried to mess up the music?
Yeah.
And Eru said, everything has its uttermost source in Eru. So by trying to do evil, you will be Eru's instrument in devising things more wonderful than you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
And it's another one of those instances. So like Manwë's got a little bit of hope from Eru there that all is not lost, because
this is part of the greater plan. The greater good.
The greater good. It's part of the greater good. And then Mandos does his normal thing during this little scene. And he just drops a little one-liner saying that Feanor is going to find his way to Mandos soon. So it's a bit of prophecy. Back to the Noldor. The land to the far north of Aman is called Araman, which to me is just like some Luigi and Waluigi bullshit. Like, it's just... Tolkien was like...
Some names he's not very creative.
Yeah, some names he's just like, fuck this. Aman...
I understand the families having similar names. Like, that does make sense.
Well, do you know, I was talking to, do you know Chris Hitchcock?
Yeah.
A friend of the show, Chris Hitchcock. And he said, in a way that I'm going to use as a little mnemonic from now on, he said when you're thinking of Finway's kids, they've got like 3 syllables, like Feanor, Fingolfin, Finarfin. And then if you think of Finarfin's kids, it's normally like 2 syllables, like Turgon, Fingon. So like, if it's got 3 syllables, I'm like, it makes me stop and think, oh, okay, maybe you're Finway's kid.
That's deep.
And it's just like, yeah, it was just a little mnemonic. And like, you just said it like it was a little throwaway comment. And I was like, oh shit, that's good, man. That's really going to help, actually. So yeah, but yeah, so some of these fucking names is just like Aman, Araman.
Angbang.
Oh, don't say Angbang. Don't say Ang. You'll
I'll
summon
get everyone started, won't I?
You'll summon,
I'll rev up the engines.
You'll summon the Finnish menace. Right. So the land to the far north is called Araman, and beyond that is the Helcaraxi, which is the grinding ice. And we'll get to that in a bit. And I've actually got a bit of art to show you. And they make their way north, and when they stop to camp for the night or whatever, well, it's always night. It's been the darkening of Valinor. Feanor knows that trying to cross the Helcaraxi would be insanity, right? So he then makes up his mind that he's going to go to Alqualondë, and he's going to ask the Teleri to lend them their ships and sail them across to Middle-earth. Now, as we discussed in the Teleri episode, where we go over this in more detail, you know, we were talking about how beautiful Alqualondë is and the city and what have you. And we know that the leader of the Teleri, Olwe, was not on board with this, and he refused. He said, no, doesn't mean I'm not your friend, but you are doing something stupid. So then Feanor hung around outside Alqualondë until the rest of his host arrived, and then they tried to take the ships by force, but the Teleri resisted. Eventually, weapons were drawn, and the Noldor drew their swords, and the Teleri drew their bows, and picked up rocks and whatever. Because remember, the Noldor been forging weapons of war.
Yeah.
And 3 times Feanor attacked, and 3 times Feanor was driven back. However, Fingon, son of Fingolfin, was leading the front. So it's called the vanguard. He was leading the vanguard of Fingolfin's host.
Yeah.
And he arrived after this. He arrived at Alqualondë, and he sees what looks like Feanor and his kin being attacked. And to him, and we discussed this in the Teleri episode, so if you want to know the kinslaying in more detail, go back and listen to that.
So he turns the tables.
He does turn the tables because he thinks that this is the Valar trying to stop them.
Yeah. And they have the energy because they haven't been fighting.
Yes. And this is the first kinslaying. And the result of this...
oh, shit.
...is that the swan ships of Alqualondë are stolen, destroyed, and some of the best mariners that would have ever lived are killed
Are these the swan ships with the jet eyes?
It's the jet eyes and the golden beaks, yeah.
I remember.
Yeah.
I do listen.
and so Olwe, he called for, do you know the Maya Osse? The one who was a big friend of the Teleri who convinced them to stay?
Yeah.
He called for him, but he couldn't intervene because Manwë had said that none of the Aina would stop them. He said, like, you do what you want. So
none of the Ainur, the Valar.
The Ainur is the Valar and the Maiar, isn't it? It's the collective term for all of them. But Manwë is the High King of Arda, remember, and he said no, nobody interferes with them. So that's why the ships weren't like wrecked in like one big storm. But a lot of the ships do get wrecked because they don't know how to sail them.
Yeah.
And so the Noldor all continue on north. Some of them are walking and some of them are sticking close to the shore in the ships. And because, you know, they couldn't go into the coastal waters. They couldn't go into the open ocean because they couldn't fucking sail. So they get to the border of Valinor and they're heading into Araman when they beheld a dark figure standing high above them on a rock that overlooked the shore. Some say it was Mandos himself. And if it was, he then pronounced a doom of the Noldor. And I said this as like a throwaway comment the other day, but I said, I wondered, is this a prophecy? Is it a warning? Or...
a curse.
Exactly, like, is this him passing sentence? And it's one of those things where, depending on how you choose to look at it, I mean, firstly, I think it's just a prophecy. But if you want to do like make it into like a horror movie or like a horror story, think of it more as this, what I'm going to read out now. Think of this more as someone passing sentence.
Yeah.
And Mandos, if it is him, says, "Tears unnumbered ye shall shed, and the Valar will fence Valinor against you, and shut you out, so that not even the echo of your lamentation shall pass over the mountains. On the house of Feanor the wrath of the Valar lieth from the west unto the uttermost east, and upon all that will follow them it shall be laid also. Their oath shall drive them, and yet betray them, and ever snatch away the very treasure that they have sworn to pursue. To evil end shall all things turn where they begin well, and by treason of kin unto kin. And the fear of treason shall this come to pass. The dispossessed shall they be for ever. Ye have spilled the blood of your kindred unrighteously, and have stained the land of Aman. For blood ye shall render blood, and beyond Aman ye shall dwell in death's shadow. For though Eru appointed you to die not in Ea, and no sickness may assail you, yet slain ye shall be, and slain ye may be, by weapon and by torment and by grief, and your houseless spirits shall come then to Mandos. There long ye shall abide and yearn for your bodies, and find little pity, though all whom ye have slain should entreat for you. And those that endure in Middle-earth and come not to Mandos shall grow weary of the world as with a great burden, and shall wane, and become shadows of regret before the younger race that cometh after. The Valar have spoken." That must have been terrifying for the Noldor to hear, because I think it's intimidating just reading it sometimes.
Do you read it often?
Yes.
To the child?
Yes. I tell her. Every time she's naughty, I say, "Ye have spilled the blood of your kin unrighteously. Blood shall render blood."
Wondered why she cowered in the corner.
And I say, you'll not receive any pity, even if all those you have slain entreat for you. But just, could you imagine hearing that? And this is from a high figure stood on the rocks high above you. A dark figure stood on the rocks high above you. And you know it'd be one of those ones where like your ears would ring.
It's almost
feel
like
it in your chest.
if the Grim Reaper was stood at night along a barren, quiet road, telling you, if you take one more step, you are Fucked.
Hell yeah. Because from this, one of them shows some sense.
Phew.
Finarfin, Feanor's half-brother, the youngest of Finwë's 3 sons.
He values his life.
He sees sense. And it's not just sense. Like, he didn't want to go anywhere. And he just did it out of, like, loyalty. But he turns back. And people, some of the people with him turn back as well. And he loved Olwe. Like, Finarfin was very close with Olwe of the Teleri. And he was absolutely gutted about what had happened.
His bestie had been destroyed.
Yes. And so they turn back, and the first thing they see is the giant tower, the Mindon Light, and they turn back, and Finarfin actually becomes High King of the Noldor, and he's still High King of the Noldor in Arman, like,
nice.
if they were still there. So he showed a lot of fucking sense, and he and the elves who were with him were welcomed back, and it was like no harm, no foul for them, and I'm sure the Teleri forgave them first of the Noldor. God.
There must have been a lot of unrest, though, with the Noldor before. It can't just be all because he is very commanding and a wordsmith. So there must have been unrest to start with, which really the Valar should have addressed before it got to this point where they were that well led.
Yeah, there were. So you remember that? Of course they were, because Melkor was going between them. Remember,
yeah.
And he was stirring shit. And remember, the Vanyar wanted nothing to do with him. They were like, "No, go away, you fucking creep." The Teleri he didn't think were worth anything, so he never tried with them. But the Noldor were just right.
Yeah, but wouldn't you think that the Valar would have stepped in a little sooner?
Yes.
Or is this part of the plan?
No, I think they should have. And it's said in the Silmarillion that it's not until Feanor's drawn the sword on Fingolfin and he's brought to the Ring of Doom and exiled, that's when they find out that Melkor was involved.
Yeah.
But I think they should have kept closer watching him, because he did all this just after while he was still confined to... Oh, no, it wasn't. It was after he was confined to Valinor. But it was after he'd been arrested once.
I see this as a management film.
Yeah, not 100% agree with you there. I really do. Talk about the grand plan all you want. It's Manwë's failing. He didn't believe Tulkas and Orome when they were like, he's still a shifty cunt. So, yeah, I 100% agree with you there. Manwë, it said that Manwë didn't have evil in his heart and he didn't have deceit in his heart, so he didn't understand that Melkor had these things. Well, that's not the point.
Be a good leader.
Yeah, that's not the point, because that doesn't make him any better than Manwë, than Orome and Tulkas, because they still knew he was fucky.
Yeah, you can understand darkness without being dark.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. And I've got to be very careful about how I put this, because I don't want to colour your perceptions of Feanor when we revisit this in January. When we look at Feanor as a character and we look at the analysis, and you'll eventually, we'd hopefully, our unnamed guest, we will try and get you to, we'll look at both sides of his actions. So I say that just in the interest of, this is a fucking cunty thing to do he does now. Horrible thing that Feanor does now. I'm being impartial. Absolute dick move. The Noldor reach the edge of the Helcaraxi after this, right? They push on, right? Feanor hardens his heart and he's like, nah, fuck you, I'm still going. And Fingolfin, so Fingolfin's people, they don't turn back either. They want to see Middle-earth. The Noldor reach the edge of the Helcaraxi, the grinding ice, and that's what it was, because it's literally gigantic chunks of ice grinding together in freezing water and constant freezing fog. That's what it is, and it's one of the most dangerous places in whole of Arda. And Fingolfin's folk started to despair. Now they are really fucking depressed now, and they blame Feanor for all this shit, and a lot of them wanted to turn back. And Feanor heard all of this, and he debated what to do with his sons. Now we come back to the Doom of Mandos, where he's saying like the treachery will awaken, kin unto kin. So Feanor was talking to his sons, and they debated what to do, and they saw their course. Feanor and his sons, and the ones loyal to them, the ones who had fought and killed Teleri, because it's like a gang, like blood in, blood out, like you've killed for me, like I know you're loyal. They would take the ships, but they couldn't carry all of the Noldor. There wasn't enough ships, because a lot of them had been wrecked. Because remember, they can't fucking sail them. So Feanor now only wanted his sons and those he was sure were loyal to him, and they wouldn't take turns. They wouldn't go across and then send them back. Right? They didn't trust each other for that. Or it wasn't more like a ship of Fingolfin's, a ship of Feanor's, a ship of Fingolfin's, and
so
then
they were
back
good
and
enough
forth.
to make numbers, but ultimately they weren't
Yeah.
important.
Feanor and his sons, and the others who were loyal to him, took the boats. They abandoned Fingolfin and the others to their fates at the edge of one of the most dangerous places on the planet, and they just fucking bailed across that narrow part of the sea. And when they landed in Middle-earth, in Lamoth, the same place where Morgoth and Ungoliant had came to, Feanor's oldest son, Maedhros, asked who they should bring over first. He said, Dad, we're going to go and get the rest of the Noldor, right? Who should we bring over first? Should we bring over Fingon the Valiant? And Maedhros and Fingon are very, very close friends. And Maedhros will go on to... He's the one who gets hung from Thangorodrim for 30 years. Well, it's Fingon who rescues him.
Yeah.
And so he says, who should we bring over first? Fingon the Valiant? And Feanor said, none and none. What I have left behind I count now no loss. Needless baggage on the road it has proved. Let those that cursed my name curse me still, and wind their way back to the cages of the Valar. Let the ships burn. And he did it. The madman. He fucking did it. He burns the bloody boats so that nobody else can use them. And in some early versions of this tale, Feanor loses a son here because one of he's got two sons called Amrod and Amras. One of them, in some versions of the tale, is still asleep on the boat when it gets burnt. I don't think it's in the published Silmarillion. And I think that's despicable behaviour. Again,
does this eventually turn out to be a favour for those left behind, though? Because did they actually turn back? Please tell me they turn back and they're safe and happy. Oh, for goodness sake.
So anyway, this made Fingolfin angry. Again, so important to note as well is the fire is so big and the gap so short, Fingolfin and his elves can see the fire, and as well, other things can see this fire. This is a beacon. And Fingolfin gets very determined now to get to the other side and just have a very quiet talk with his brother about just what in the fuck he was doing. Like I mentioned, we're getting close to the end of the beginning now. Fingolfin was shamed, and now he was full of bitterness. And so he couldn't turn back because now he was angry as well as bitter. And so he decided to push on to Middle-earth. And he did it in the only way available to them. They went north. Fingolfin, Galadriel, Fingon, Turgon, lots of Noldor went north through the Helcaraxi, and they were led by, like I mentioned, Galadriel, Fingon, blah blah blah. And it is said that this act is one of the greatest deeds that the Noldor have ever done because it was that dangerous. On this crossing, Turgon, who was a very important Noldor elf who becomes king of Gondolin, lost his wife Elenwe. Her and their daughter Idril fell into the icy waters, and he tried to save them both, but he could only pull his daughter out. And it was so cold that Elenwe was like covered in ice before before he could even get her out. And this made him a bitter enemy of the House of Feanor until the end of his days, because he saw this as their fault. And I think we mentioned it way back in our Vanyar episode, but Elenwe, she was the only Vanyar elf who left. She's the only one to have ever voluntarily left Aman, and she dies on the crossing. And so eventually they cross, and I just want to show you this picture here. And for anyone listening, I think it's the one of the crossing of the Helcaraxi by Ted Naismith, and this just gives kind of a representation of what it looked like of the host of the Noldor. So
someone who hates the cold.
Fingolfin,
that is hellish.
Fingolfin's was the bigger host, but they lose a lot of people here, and it's a very momentous occasion because when Fingolfin's host make it through the other side, the moment they step foot onto Middle-earth properly is the very first rising of the moon, which officially marks the beginning of the first age of Middle-earth. And the moon is in the sky. It would rise and set for 7 days before the sun arrives. And the sun, and then the sun and the moon change, and it becomes the day and night cycle that we're aware of now. And Morgoth absolutely fucking hates that. But what happens on the first day that the sun rises as well is humans awake in Hildorian, in the far east of Middle-earth. So it's all
domino effect.
This is what I mean when I said we're getting close to the end of the beginning. This is now the Noldor are here. They're queer. get used to it. But no, the Noldor are here, and now it's the major events of Middle Earth now. So that's why, when I said at the beginning of the episode, I'll be happy. This is why I'm happy to bring the series to an end at this part. So we'll go back to the elves, because again, we've got to wrap it up now. So Feanor, it's the bastard, he's landed at Lamoth, the Great Echo, and it's called the Echo because when Ungoliant do you know when Ungoliant had Morgoth wrapped up in her webs?
Yeah.
And he screamed?
Yeah.
It said that in Lamoth forever, until Beleriand sank, that if you could make a loud enough sound, it would wake the cry of Morgoth in the hills, and it would make a dreadful sound, and it was because it said that Morgoth let cry the most awful cry that had ever been heard. And that's where Feanor and his boys landed. But the burning of the ships at this place where they burned them was called Losgar. It acted as a beacon to everyone, including Morgoth's forces. So Feanor passed into the land of Hithlum and came to the north of a long lake called Mithrim. And the enemies, so Morgoth's armies, then attacked from Ered Withrin, which is the Mountains of Shadow. But the Noldor made short work of them because they still... So Mandos had said, you'll grow weary, you'll grow weary in Middle-earth. Hadn't happened yet. They still had the light of Aman in them. So they made very short work of this huge army that Morgoth had sent after them. And this battle was called Dagar Nuin Gileath, which is called the Battle Under Stars, because this was during the first 7 days of the moon. Or, sorry, it might have been prior to the moon, because Fingolfin's people might not have got here yet. And anyway, this was the second battle of the Great Battles of Beleriand, and the first one we covered, I think it might have been in our Calac Wendy episode. Do you know when we talked about the Nandor and stuff? And so do you remember when I said the Nandor, when they finally made it to Beleriand, and they were led by Denethor, who got killed when he was defending Thingol?
Oh, yeah.
So it was that when orcs first appeared. So that was the first battle. And this is the second one. So this battle of the Noldor easily won, but Feanor became overconfident. He pressed on, and he pressed on, chasing the orcs as they retreated. And he hoped now, and he was laughing, swinging his sword about, thinking, it's just fucking easy. Done it. Completed it, mate. He wanted to come to Morgoth himself. He thought he was going to get to Morgoth himself and then have his vengeance. But Feanor and Morgoth have something in common, in that they overextended themselves and paid very dearly for it. Morgoth, after these events, will overextend himself to the Noldor, and it will result in the Siege of Angband. But here, Feanor overextends himself, and the thing is, right, at this very moment in time while we're talking about this, you know more about Angband than Feanor does. Feanor has no idea that Angband exists.
Weak.
Yeah, weak. So Feanor, he chases the orcs and eventually gets to the gates of Angband, and Feanor is surrounded. He's only got a very small force with him. And
Shit, you left everyone else behind.
And from not even of the people he was with, because they set up their encampments along the north bit of Mithrim, but before they could dig in properly and all that, the orcs attacked. So they've just been on the move since then, and the Balrogs come. The Balrogs come forward from the gates of Angband, and they surround Feanor. And Feanor fights on, give him his credit, he fights on, he's valiant, and he fights on for a long, long time. But he suffers many wounds, and eventually the Lord of Balrogs, Gothmog, appears, and he will eventually get his comeuppance at the fall of Gondolin, where he's killed by Glorfindel. But before that, he kills Ecthelion, who is a very good elf as well. Badass. But all badasses. But he smashes Feanor to the ground, and he's just about to kill him when Feanor's sons finally arrive and collect Feanor. And his sons start to carry him back towards Mithrim because he's very, very wounded. But Feanor told him to stop because he knew, this is it. I'm done. So Feanor looks towards Thangorodrim, and there's this thing that's quite common in Middle-earth, is people get the power of foresight when they're close to death. It happens in Children of Húrin. It happens quite a lot. Again, there's too many to count. But Feanor looks towards Thangorodrim, and he curses Morgoth 3 times because he knows, and this is, I hate this bit, because Feanor knows in the moment of his death that the Noldor will never be able to overcome Morgoth, right? And that is true. They eventually need the Valar to do it as well, and that's when Eärendil goes on the errand of the 2 kindreds at the end of the first stage, right? So at this point, Feanor knows that Morgoth cannot be overcome by the Noldor, but you know what he still does? He tells his sons to still hold to their oath, and he curses Morgoth's name 3 times, and then he dies. But the spirit of Feanor is so strong, he doesn't need to be buried. Doesn't need anything. His spirit burns away his body to ash, and it blows away in the wind. And Feanor is then committed to Mandos. When Mandos said he'll come to me soon, and he does. And Feanor will never be released from Mandos until the end of Arda. And it's said, possibly, that in Dagor Daggerath, which is the last battle, that at the end of all things, that Feanor would crack open the Silmarils and release the light of the trees back into the world. And it's also at Dagor Daggerath that Turin Tarambar, from the Children of Húrin story, he would be the one to kill Morgoth. And it's all this type of stuff. But that's it. That's the end of Feanor. And one of the like I've said, I think he's the catalyst for most of the events of the first age of Middle-earth, and then domino effects onwards. And that's where we set our stage. So the Noldor have went to Aman, and they've left Aman. Feanor was born and died. They rebelled, and they've now had the doom of Mandos upon them, which will torment them. So, like, by the time you get to the third age, like Galadriel and other elves, they are weary of the world, and that's why you go from elves in the first age who are doing war and stuff like that, and you know,
by the end they're
then by the end they don't really
become wise and old and realize what's actually important.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And so Fingolfin's host after this, just as a little wrap it off, they get to Mithrim in Hithlum, like they get to the lake, but there's so much distrust between them that Feanor's people move to the south side of the lake and Fingolfin's to the north side. And even though a lot of the Feanorians are really happy to see Fingolfin's lot, they're so ashamed that they don't think like they can say anything. And again, that is where we'll pull our Noldor series, the events, to a close with the death of Feanor, because now we've got them in Middle-earth, and we'll now move on to, when we cover them, we'll cover the events. So, like, there's things like the hidden city of Gondolin, like the creation and then the eventual fall of Gondolin by an incel who betrays them. Then you've got the delving of Nargothrond, which is one of the greatest cities as well, which is mentioned in Durin's song that we listen to every night against your will. And then we've got the Siege of Angband, which I mentioned is where Morgoth overextends his hand, gets chased back to Angband, and the siege lasts 400 years. It's only broken when Glaurung comes forth fully grown. We've got the second kinslaying. Oh, we've had one kinslaying, yes, but what about second kinslaying?
How long have you waited to say that?
I don't think that's the first time I've made that joke, you know. But then there's the third kinslaying, and this is all just in the first stage. Like, there's still Dagor Bragollach, Nir Naieth Arnoediad. Like, there's so many. So we're at the point now where the Noldor are now interwoven into other tales. So even like with Beren and Luthien, Celegorm and... oh, fuck. I forgot his name. Yeah, anyway, two of Feanor's sons, they are like antagonists in the tale of Beren and Luthien. So, like, my point being, we're at the point, it was Curufin and Celegorm. We're at the point now where the Noldor just intertwined into everything, and that's what I wanted to get us to. It's a little bit more cut and dry with the Vanyar in particular, because they're just like, they pop back over at the end of the first stage, and then they're off again. The Teleri, they more or less become the Sindar. And like I said, like, I think actually we ended the Teleria one pretty much the same way. It's like we covered most of the major events up to a point, and then they just become entwined into the other stories. So like Thingol is still alive in our series of the podcast, up to this point in the podcast for us, because his death is not just related to the Sindar elves or the Teleri elves. It's wrapped up in the Nauglamir, which is a necklace as the Silmaril. It's also to do with the First Age dwarves. So do you get what I mean? Where it's like it's becoming much more of a tapestry again. Yeah. And it happened when we at the begin. Actually, it happened at the beginning of the podcast. Do you remember we got about 6 episodes in, where it was the elves were told to go to Aman, or asked to go to Aman, and then we jumped to start and doing other topics because up to that point it was kind of a linear story, but then it all became like it was about one thing, and then it all became
it's all
like
branched off.
Yeah, but now we've got it opens it all up for us. Now we've got things I want to cover, like the sun and the moon, like because they're fruits of the trees, and they're guided by Maiar, a very, very powerful Maiar that Morgoth fears one of them almost, like she's a badass. And then we've got humans we can discuss, and it's cool stuff like that.
I think I might identify a bit more with humans.
Nah, dwarf life. Honestly, the biggest realization I've had from this whole series is you agree with Feanor and you're like, oh yeah, that's like me, and it really fucking is. Like, I can't believe this, I'm married to Feanor. Like, do you know what the biggest bit for me was? Do you know when he drew the sword on Fingolfin? And then Fingolfin walked away. And then he followed him. And you were like, yeah, I'd do the same thing. I was like, oh dear.
I do the same thing.
So how have you found this series then?
Very interesting. And very thought-provoking as well. It's made me question
I've enjoyed
my beliefs. And also see the Valar as quite weak. Yeah. Because
you certainly understand when the Noldor are involved that they're not perhaps omnipotent. They never were omnipotent, but they become, is humbled the right word? But you certainly get, I get the feeling that through Feanor's actions and the Noldor, like it brings them down a peg or two.
Yeah, like he's a revolutionist, really.
Yeah, he is. He some people play the game, some people refuse to play the game, and then some people flip the board.
Yeah.
And he's a board flipper.
For like a long time, they felt like they've been in the ivory tower.
I think
apart from in terms of Morgoth, they haven't. But
kind of. I think it's more along the lines of.
You can tell Morgoth was definitely involved in this because of the route that Feanor's taken and that leeching into people and into the world. His actions are very Morgoth.
If I was to translate this into some lore things, would you say that seeing Feanor marred is a direct result of the Valar having to deal with the tangible effects of Arda marred?
Yeah.
Like they're seeing like, oh, okay, this is the type of stuff that's happened because of what Morgoth's done. Yeah. It's not just the breaking mountain shit. It's much more insidious than that.
It's the whole natural world.
It's the
it's
whole...
It's not the fixed world. It's the inhabitants as well.
Do you know what it is? Do you know what the Valar are?
What?
Up until Feanor came along, they were us. Like, oh, our baby sleeps. She's fine. Oh yeah, or like they're like the first time parents are like, oh, I've looked out here, she's absolutely great, like they're mint. And then Feanor comes along, he's the second child, who's an absolute little cunt, and you're just like, we knew nothing.
I feel like that's not a great example, to be honest, because I feel like our child's ruined me. So
as a toddler, yeah, but as a baby, she was absolutely class. Well,
what are you talking about?
Apart from your postnatal depression and all that.
Yeah.
All right, maybe not a good example.
Not a good example. Maybe for other people, might be a perfect example.
Yeah, like the firstborn who's like really easy.
If you've got a perfect firstborn child.
The firstborn who's
and they
really
lure you into having a second.
The firstborn is really easy, and then the Valar have been telling everyone like, oh, you just need to give them a routine and make sure that you don't go in when they're crying. It's like, well, that's because that's worked for your baby, who's a very easy baby.
But I think that's also very rare.
Yeah, and then Feanor's come along and he's been like, wow, motherfucker.
Yeah.
But we digest. So, I've had a good time doing this one. As mentioned, right, immediate schedule. It is the... fucking hell, it's only the 13th of December. Right. Got one more episode
it's
before...
only a week. Just over a week till Christmas.
Got 2 more episodes coming before Christmas. We've got the little language one that'll be from me. It'll be about 20-30 minutes, or if you're
prepared to be bored because I won't be there.
Fuck off. If you're a language nerd, you'll love it. Or if you're like me, where this has been unexpected, like a little bit of lore tidbit or like unexpected avenue of knowledge, then you'll love it. So I'll put that out. But it's only going to be 20-30 minutes long, so whatever. Then we're going to do a drunk talk episode, aren't we? About the festivals in Middle-earth.
Yeah, and drink some festive drinks.
Yep, that'll be out before... I don't know when we're going to record it, but we'll be in your hands before Christmas.
Snowballs,
which would be nice. Yeah.
Baileys, eggnog, mulled wine.
Do you want a snowball, Twiggy? No, Bab. Do you want an avocado? Would you drop a lemonade in it? Right, okay. That is us for today. I hope you're having a nice time. I would ask you, please, if you got this far into it, come and follow me on Instagram, come and drop me a line, join our Discord, just give me a text, hire a plane to fly above the northeast of England with a little message on it for us. I can't guarantee that I'll be looking up all of the time, but if I are,
skywriting.
If you've got skywriting, tell us. Ask your wife's boyfriend to follow us as well. Give us a review.
Chair.
Yeah, that's it really. That's it for me, Chris.
And bye from Rebecca.
Bye.